Good evening, everybody. Welcome into To The Point. We're all doing well on this Tuesday. Less than a week till Christmas. We got a lot to get into tonight and this week. We're doing a podcast later in the week. We'll talk about the NFL games this weekend. Then we're going to do our World Junior Preview show on Friday. So that's coming up on Friday. We'll talk about the tournament. There was some news on the front of the World Juniors yesterday, which we will get into on this podcast. We'll go into greater detail on Friday, preview the tournament. It starts a week from today. Games begin as early as 7 a.m., so be on the lookout for that because it's in Sweden, not in Canada or in the United States. So earlier start times, things of that nature, so be prepared. We'll talk about that on Friday. All today, injuries across the NBA, including the Cleveland Cavaliers, which could be catastrophic, and do they blow up their season? Ja Morant returns tonight after a 25-game suspension. The Pistons lose again. We got some Major League Baseball news and notes. And NFL, as always, after another interesting game last night in Seattle, Washington. Let's start with the NHL and the news yesterday that broke that I predicted would happen Sunday night. If you were listening to us during the Sunday Night Live podcast. Ottawa, the Senators, were in Vegas on a 3-game losing streak, losing to St. Louis, who had just fired their coach, then losing to Dallas with a backup goaltender. They go into Vegas on a Sunday. Vegas is one of the best teams in the league, as consistent as anybody. And Vegas hands Ottawa their lunch, destroying them 6-3. So they travel to Arizona, where they'll play tonight. They practiced. DJ Smith met with the media. And then not long after, it was revealed that he was fired and would no longer be the head coach of the Ottawa Senators. First of all, not a surprise, not the wrong decision. DJ Smith had gotten a longer leash than 90% of head coaches do in pro sports. When you go through your entire tenure as a head coach and you don't make the playoffs, he should feel thankful that he remained head coach that long. I think he remained head coach that long because Ottawa was going through ownership changes. They didn't have a whole lot of money. Eugene Melnyk died. So Pierre Dorian and DJ Smith kept their jobs longer than they would have if they had stable ownership. But you're anywhere 6 years and you don't make any money or you don't have any success. Your company, whatever it is, you don't have any success doing it, you're going to be fired. DJ Smith, in almost 6 years at his position, did not make the playoffs once, did not come close to making the playoffs, did not have a whole lot of success. And the story of the Ottawa Senators was always, they're a couple pieces away. They're so close. They got good young players, blah, 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 blah. That was the story. I even bought into it this year. I never bought in until this year. I predicted they'd be a playoff team. I'm going to be wrong about that. I already know it because it's December. For the Ottawa Senators to make the playoffs, they have to have a .650 winning percentage down the stretch. They're not going to. But DJ Smith is out. They're going to miss again. They haven't made the playoffs since 2017 when they were in the conference final. So with all that being said, DJ Smith's out. And Jacques Martin, who was hired as a coaching consultant a few weeks ago, will be the head man behind a bench for the first time in 11 years. He coached the Senators in the late 90s, early 2000s. He was a head coach for a lot of those battles with the Maple Leafs in the early 2000s. He had very good teams. His captain for those teams was one Daniel Alfredsson. And in another move, Daniel Alfredsson will become a full-time assistant coach beginning tonight. Here's my thoughts. I'm fine with Jacques Martin. He's 71. He's not going to be a head coach of the future. You play out the year, and then the next general manager, which I think Steve Staios very well could go the route of a Kyle Dubas, not name a GM, and run things, which if that's what you want to do it. I have no issue with that. Presidents wants to pull the strings, wants to do the work, wants to build the team in his image, then do it. Why allow somebody else to have their opinion when you don't want their opinion? It's pretty simple business to me, and I think most owners are going to be behind it, because why pay somebody's salary if you don't have to? Just simple economics. But if Steve Staios is going to be the president / GM of this team moving forward, he needs to be the one to make the tough decisions. He needs to figure out what to do with this roster. Because while I think the Ottawa Senators have a lot of really intriguing talent, I think Tim Stützle is a superstar. I've said this. I still think he is. I think Jake Sanderson is not a generational defenseman, but he's one you can have on your top pair for years to come. I believe that. This franchise has been inept at picking a goaltender. Jonas Korpisalo, 5 years, has been a disaster so far. He can't make a save. He's completely all over the place. They don't have stable goaltending again. They can't find one. Cam Talbot, you run through the goal. Craig Anderson, all the goalies that they've had have not worked out. That's a problem. Steve Staios needs to find a goaltender. This team is going nowhere. They have a lot of young talent that are around the same age that are now turning into veterans that don't know how to win. Josh Norris doesn't know how to win. Tim Stützle doesn't. Drake Batherson doesn't know how to win. Anybody who has an opposite opinion is an idiot, if you ask me, because look at what they've done together. They haven't done anything. They haven't won jack shit. Haven't made the playoffs. You know how easy it is to make the playoffs in pro sports today? They keep pumping in more playoff teams so everybody gets in. And the Senators haven't even been able to do that. And they signed all these guys to long-term contracts, which aren't crazy money. I think they're tradable deals. You don't want to move everybody. But to me, there's two names that come top of mind that I think the Senators should really look at moving. Number one is Thomas Chabot. When he's on the ice, he's a pretty good defenseman. But when he's not on the ice, he's worthless. And more often than not, he's not on the ice. I don't think he's number one. I think Chychrun's better than Chabot, and I know Sanderson is. So trading Chabot for cap space, trading Chabot for veterans to come in to help this younger team wouldn't be a bad idea. And there are enough teams with bad defensemen out there that would make a deal with you. They'd take the risk with Chabot. I don't think it's a dead cap deal. It's a move that can be made if you're a good enough general manager and you know what you're doing. Player number two, and this is the tougher one, is Drake Batherson. Drake Batherson is, he's a kid from Atlanta, Canada. I root for him. Great story. Matt Wright, who's been on this podcast a ton, was his roommate in Junior A. Great stuff. To me, he's going to be skimmed for a couple of reasons. One, there's that whole World Junior scandal. It just smells. I want that off my roster. And I don't know if they haven't released anything yet, but when there's smoke, there's fire. That's all I'm saying. Number two, I don't see compete night in, night out from him. I think he's horrible at positioning in his own zone. I don't see the compete, and he's just there. He's a jag. He's just a guy. He's a good player. Don't get me wrong. But he's not a difference maker. He's a winger that can do things, sure. But to me, I look at him and go, He's got 23 points in 26 games. It's a good season. Sure. 10 goals. Great. But I just don't love his compete night in, night out. I want to see more from him. And I look around at the wingers on this team. I'm not getting rid of Brady Tkachuk. I'm not. Claude Giroux is a tougher deal, but I don't want to deal Claude Giroux. Tarasenko's on an expiring. He can go. But to get better, you have to sometimes trade away pieces. Ridley Gregg, still waiting. Josh Norris has been really underwhelming this season. Really underwhelming. Shabbat's played 9 games. I also think this team's made stupid decisions on some of their players. Travis Hamonic being on an NHL team is stupid in general. The fact that he's playing. They keep Eric Brandstrom year over year. It doesn't work for him in Ottawa. Move off of him. They made that trade for Kubalik. Again, more money brought on your team. The goalies haven't worked out. Korpisalo, 350 goals against. Forsberg, 323, 892 save percentage for Korpisalo, 876 for Forsberg. Both garbage. You're not going anywhere with that. So they're going to pick, Steve Stais and Michael Andlauer are going to pick a new head coach. And the head coach position is important, don't get me wrong. But it's not as important as the general manager. Not close, present. Being a GM is a tougher job than being a coach. Because if you don't have the pieces to give to the coach, you're not going to win. And eventually, ownership will realize it and go, hey, I'm firing you too. Because you gave him the keys to the car and he can't drive. This team can't drive. That's the Ottawa Senators. Here's my one thing about the head coach, and this is what I'm worried about. Jacques Martin is clearly a placeholder. Daniel Alfredsson's on the bench. I hate when organizations give out head coaching jobs to the best player in franchise history, and it's a great moment and people celebrate it, and then you look up and go, was that the right move? And you have to move off of that player, and you have to fire him, and then the relationship between him and the organization isn't great anymore. Let me think of Trevor Linden comes to mind in Vancouver, and that was a GM, but same thing. He's the greatest player to play for your franchise, one of the best for Trevor Linden, but it's just an ugly separation. And I'd want to keep that relationship because I don't think these guys are good enough to warrant giving the job to ruin that alumni relationship. I'd hire somebody better. And I worry about Ottawa just grooming Alfredsson to give him the head coaching job. And Ottawa fans will be ecstatic. So thrilled. Alfredsson, our head coach, press release, it'll be great. Hugs and kisses. Everybody will come down to that rink in the middle of buttfuck nowhere and celebrate it. But I don't want to see them do. I hope Alfredsson's just down there to provide the assistant coach job because they need somebody. Not because they want him to be the head coach in the future. Number one, I don't think he's ready. And I don't think he's the right guy for the job. They just went through DJ Smith. He was an assistant coach for a long time. Not a head coach, but an assistant. Alfredsson hasn't coached. I had the same issue with Martin St. Louis. Could say he's doing an okay job in Montreal. He doesn't have a great team. Okay. I still don't think it was the right hire. He was coaching kids. And he's doing fine, but he's got no expectations. He has the easiest job in the league because nobody expects them to win. So anything that positive happens, it's jolly, oh, great, Marty St. Louis. And the biggest criteria for giving him the job was that he spoke French. which is beyond stupid. You want to talk about woke people? That's about just as racist as anyone else. Can't hire, but give you that one for free. Democrats didn't think about that though. But these hires was, we really like him and we love him in the area. I worry about that. And I'm not just get a recycled coach because that's the last coach we had no experience. Now we're gonna bring somebody with lots of experience because you think, we can hire Gerard Gallant, who I wouldn't hire, or Craig Berube, who I might. There's guys out there, Claude Julien, who I wouldn't hire, Bruce Boudreau, I wouldn't hire, Joel Quenneville, I would. Will the league let him back in? I don't know. I don't think he wants to coach the Senators. But it's a job. And it's, employment and a check. You're back in the game. You're back in the fight. But if I'm the Senators, I'm playing. They got a long time. Like St. Louis. Like Minnesota. Like Edmonton, potentially, to scour the area to look for candidates. To look for guys who could come in and take the job. I think Chief Craig Berube would be a good hire. I do. But Andlauer bought the team for a lot of money. You're in a Canadian market. You want them to be successful. I don't think he's going to be afraid to spend money on a head coach to turn this team around. Because otherwise you shouldn't buy a sports team if you aren't willing to spend money to build a winner. Because then you can just watch the games, have a favorite team, and if they lose, they lose. If they win, they win. You turn off the TV and you move on. Maybe, like I said, Quenneville could be out there. Maybe it doesn't go well for Tampa this year. And they fire John Cooper. I wouldn't fire John Cooper, but when a coach is anywhere a long time, you consider it. Maybe Pittsburgh and Kyle Dubas fire Mike Sullivan. We've seen crazier things happen in sports. People get fired every day for different reasons. And they might have Alfredson on their short list, but he's the guy they see first. You just throw them in. I don't want that to be the situation because I don't think it'll be successful for him or the team. Ottawa Senators fans know one thing. They're used to failure. They major in it. 2017, the last time they made the playoffs. It's not a good list. It's a long time. In that time frame, the Toronto Maple Leafs have made the playoffs every year, and the Montreal Canadiens went to a Stanley Cup final. Their two biggest rivals were having success while they haven't. And Ottawa, a team that was projected to be a playoff team this year, is last in the Eastern Conference, which would mean that the Montreal Canadiens, rebuilding, are ahead of them. That's not good either. All those things are not positive. So tough decisions coming up. I don't think they should have made him do the media. I disagree with that, what they did to DJ Smith in that moment. However, it is a warranted firing, and I thought it would happen. Because you can only lose so many games. You can only have guys make so many defensive mistakes without having a course correction. But if they wanted to truly try to make the playoffs and make a firing to spark the team, they should have did it a month ago. Because it's too little too late. The season's over. Sorry, Sens fans. You're not winning 50% of your games down the stretch. Unless Korpisalo morphs into Carey Price, it ain't happening. So it'll be another year of reflection, another year of pondering who you keep and who you move on from, and who you hire. Because ultimately, we know this core of guys isn't winning anything. World Juniors kicks off in a week. They released their roster last week. They kept their roster spot open because they were hoping they were going to get some help from the National Hockey League. Shane Wright was a possibility, but Seattle said no. He's averaging over a point per game in the American League. They like his progress. Thought maybe Zach Benson, who's currently playing for the Buffalo Sabres. But no, then they said maybe the Boston Bruins, who have a young center by the name of Matt Poitras, who's been solid in his rookie season. Has been in and out of the lineup the last couple weeks. His play has started to dip a little bit. And I think the biggest consideration for the Boston Bruins was our center ice position is weaker than it's ever been. We don't have depth. We have some injuries. What are we going to do here? But ultimately, Boston yesterday announced that they were loaning Matt Poitras to Team Canada, and he will be playing at the World Junior Hockey Championship next week. A big opportunity for him and a big moment for Team Canada to get a 19-year-old who is playing in the National Hockey League. This season, he's got 13 points in 27 games. He's been pretty good. Played in the Guelph Storm, had 95 points last season in his final OHL season. He might go back to the OHL, depending on how the tournament goes and if Boston wants to keep him around. But Team Canada only has one returning player, and that returning player only played in the quarterfinal for a few minutes. Was a late add to the tournament because of an injury last year. So it's an entirely new team coming to Gothenburg, Sweden. And while Matt Poitras never played at the World Juniors, he's been playing in the National Hockey League against men, and I think it's a huge boost. Team Canada is going to have a good team. We'll talk about it more on Friday. But they're not as deep as they were the last couple tournaments, with guys like Kent Johnson, Mason McTavish, and obviously Connor Bedard. But Matt Poitras is a nice add to counteract the United States, who have a lot of returning players. Team Sweden, who have a number of returning players trying to win gold at home. So this is a nice piece for Team Canada. Boston, it does surprise me a bit that they lose a center iceman. But clearly they believe this is better for his development. They can get by without him. They've been incredibly successful this year. Their play has dipped a bit of late. And I do think their center ice position is going to become a bigger and bigger issue because they don't have the bodies to throw in there. They're not comfortable with everybody at the center ice position. But nevertheless, they go in this direction. And Matt Poitras is over in Sweden. He practiced today. And Canada played their first pre-tournament game this afternoon against Denmark, and I believe won about 10-11 to nothing. So they're off to a great start. They play pre-tournament games on Friday against Switzerland and Saturday against the United States. Before we move off NHL, last night was a bit quiet in the NHL. Winnipeg and Montreal, I watched a lot of that game. It was a Monday night in January. It was quiet, not a whole lot of action in that game, but Justin Barron gets the overtime winner against his brother Morgan. Dallas winning in overtime against Seattle without Jake Ottinger, who's week to week. Pittsburgh edged the Minnesota Wild with Marc-Andre Fleury on the bench, which could have been his last game in Pittsburgh, which of course became a big story because it's Marc-Andre Fleury and everything has to do with him. I don't know why he gets on my nerves so much, but he does. There's something about him. Ducks beat the Red Wings, and the Flames beat the Panthers, who quietly have points in 4 straight. But I want to talk in a minute about a guy from Prince Edward Island. A guy who's quietly been fantastic this season, and one of the best defensemen in the NHL, and that would be Noah Dobson. Came in, started playing as a 19-year-old, which rarely happens under Lou Lamoriello, but he did. And he's turned into a points machine for the Islanders. He's helped their power play in a huge way. He's one of the better defensemen in the NHL at moving the puck out of his own zone, carrying the puck up the ice, helping out the wingers. One of the best skaters in the league. We're seeing Erik Karlsson slow down. We're seeing Brent Burns slow down, these guys that were carrying the torch for a long time for defensemen. And while there is Cale Makar and Quinn Hughes who are better than Dobson, Noah Dobson is not far behind, and he very well could be in the mix for the Norris Trophy this year. 30 games played, he has 32 points, 27 assists, and to me the most impressive thing for him is he's averaging 25 minutes per night. He's a horse for the Islanders. He's blocked 73 shots. For anybody 55 plus, he's plus 17 on the plus minus scale. He's doing it all. And I just think he deserves recognition because every night he's the player you watch. If you're watching the Islanders, he's the player you notice. Because you go, wow. That was impressive. He's tied for the team lead in points with Matthew Barzal. More points than Bo Horvat, than Brock Nelson. And again, you look at their defense. He's averaging 25 minutes. Go down the line. Ryan Pollock, 22. Romanov, 22. Mike Riley, 15. Aho, 15. Pellick, 19. Bortuzzo, 12. He's playing a ton. Power play, penalty kill. He's in every key situation. He's going up against the team's best offensive players. He plays on Long Island, so you can kind of be looked over a little bit. People can go, that's not all that good. But you look around and go, he's got 32 points. 27 assists, which is top 5 in the league. He's currently tied for 25th in league scoring with a bunch of guys. That includes Scheifele, Crosby, Draisaitl. 1 point back of Gensel, Marner, Point, Austin Matthews. He's in that ilk of players. He's played that well to this point. So credit to him. And we're at this point. Nikita Kucherov still leads the NHL in points, although he's played the most games. JT Miller's he's got 45. McKinnon's second with 40. McKinnon's been quietly just a surgeon, mowing down people. Avs are starting to play better hockey. They'd scare the hell out of me. He had 4 points the other night. Plus, he laid out Jeff Skinner, injured Jeff Skinner. He's angry. He's motivated. So some good players around the league, but no clear-cut, say, MVP frontrunner to this point. Still waiting to see what happens. Tonight in the NHL, Vegas comes out east. They're in Carolina. Carolina sent down Antti Ranta to the American League. He's going to start his first American League game since 2019 this evening for the Chicago Wolves. So big moment for him. Hurricanes with Korchkov, who's been good as of late against Logan Thompson. in Carolina. Flyers, Devils, an early important game in the Metropolitan. Devils still looking to find some symbol of consistency, confidence, while Phillies just continue to chug along and find ways to get points. Columbus and Buffalo, St. Louis and Tampa Bay. Minnesota Wild on a back-to-back in Beantown to play the Matthew Poitras-less Bruins. Rangers, Maple Leafs met a week ago at the Mecca. Maple Leafs put a 7-burger on them. Curious to see how Shesterkin responds tonight, how the Rangers come out to play. Martin Jones, who got a shutout on Saturday night, will get the start this evening. Obviously, last Thursday, Samsonov let in 6 goals, was god-awful, and that god-awful game to Columbus. So Martin Jones hasn't lost a start this season, is the more competent goalie right now, and they're going with the guy who gives them the best chance to win. And I agree with the decision. Going to somebody who doesn't have the confidence and feels like, oh, you have to give it to him because he's your goalie, I don't believe in that at all. I'll save those takes for the Sportsnet guys, but keep it. It's a solid take. It's not a good take, but it's a take nonetheless. I appreciate it. I'll keep mine. But Martin Jones against the Rangers. I think the Rangers are going to come out ready to play tonight, but the Maple Leafs should as well. They haven't played since Saturday. Edmonton in Long Island to play Noah Dobson. Dobson, McDavid, some speed. The Islanders are becoming a faster team, so credit to them. Vancouver in Nashville. Nashville has been good as of late. They're in a playoff spot, which I can't believe. But Casey DeSmith, the backup goaltender for the Canucks, will get the start this evening. Colorado in Chicago. Ottawa in Arizona. I expect there to be about 3,800 people there, so crowded barn for that one tonight. And the Los Angeles Kings in San Jose to play the Sharks. So that's the slate of games this evening across the NHL. Just checking if anything else happened. Well, it's live that I can break to you. Canucks to scratch Kuzmenko again against Press. Andrei Kuzmenko, who scored 2 goals last week, is a healthy scratch again tonight. Not a Rick Tocchet guy. Not very responsible. I wouldn't say he's a committed player in both ends. He's in Tocchet's doghouse, and you can put a player like this in the doghouse because the Canucks are winning. And they're playing really good hockey. And they're getting points most nights. And Brock Besser is tied for the league leading goals. And Quinn Hughes is one of the best defensemen in the league. What he's doing is working. So do I think Kuzmenko is a good player and he's more talented than Dakota Joshua or Connor Garland or Teddy Bluger? Yeah, but he doesn't work as hard as them. And if you aren't good enough to play a top 6 role, he's useless. Dakota Joshua has been playing good hockey. He hits hard. He knows his role. And I think for a coach like Rick Tocchet, that's exactly what he wants. Somebody who's responsible and knows what he's out there to do. Kuzmenko wants to be a star, wants to be a 40-goal scorer, wants to be that guy. Well, when you're not scoring goals, when you're not in the power play 5-on-5 and you're cheating and you're not having any defensive responsibilities, you're going to be on the bench. And for him tonight, he's in the press box. But that's the NHL update for today. Let's pivot to the NBA, where tonight, it's a big moment. TNT tonight, Ja Morant will make his return to the court against the New Orleans Pelicans. 25-game suspension for 2 different incidents with a gun last year that we talked about. Since then, he's been okay, I suppose. Hasn't done anything too stupid yet. But he returns tonight. In his absence, the Memphis Grizzlies have been one of the worst teams in the NBA. They're 13th in the Western Conference at 6-19. They played last night and lost by 23 to Oklahoma City Thunder, who are fantastic. Here's what I hope. I hope in the time Ja has left the game that he's actually gotten better. I talked last week about Draymond Green, who's now in counseling, because that was revealed yesterday. I talked about how I don't think Draymond Green needed counseling. I think he just needs to not be so stupid. Ja Morant needed if you need to carry a gun everywhere, and this will hurt my Republican street cred, but you don't got to agree with everything the party says. If you need to carry a gun everywhere you go, you got a problem. Who are you afraid of? Who have you pissed off? What's the reason? What's the method to the madness? Nobody is after you that much. I don't care if you're white, black, yellow, whatever you are. Nobody's after you. You are not that popular. You're not that popular. They might be watching Taylor Swift, and they might be watching, the hair on William's head over in Buckingham Palace not grow. Like, that's who they're focused on. Ja Morant is just a guy who plays in Memphis. When he's on the court, he's one of the best players in the league. So fun to watch, incredibly dynamic, and you want to be on the court because he makes the product better. Incredibly fun. I want to see him play. I'm going to watch some of that game tonight because I want to see how he looks. He shouldn't have a minutes restriction because it wasn't like he was sitting out with an injury. He was sitting out because he was suspended for breaking rules. Memphis needs him. To me, it's too late to turn the season around. Desmond Bane's been great. Jaren Jackson's had to do a lot. Marcus Smart's been a disappointment. He's only played in 11 games. Look at their team. Derrick Rose, Derek Roddy, Luke Kennard, Zaire Williams, Bismack Biyombo has started 17 games this year for the Grizzlies. That's not a good sign. They're a wounded club. They're not as good as they used to be. And while he's been gone, teams like Oklahoma City, who have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Chet Holmgren, have surpassed them. With better talent, with Josh Giddey, who's being investigated, but he's still playing. When he's on the court, he's pretty good. Chet Holmgren, who had 7 blocks last night against the Grizzlies. Lou Dort, the Canadian, who shoots about 40% from 3. It just happens. This team has some good players. And if you're not playing together, if you're not cohesive, if you're not available, teams are going to pass you. He plays in the Western Conference, and the Western Conference is murderer's row. Oklahoma City, Denver, the Lakers, the Clippers, who have won 8 in a row. Light the Beam, Sacramento, Houston, who's pretty good. Dallas, who's pretty good, despite their effort last night. You got good team after good team that's coming at you. In the East, you can get the Pistons, or you can get the Wizards, who stink. Half the East suck. The Raptors are no good. The Hornets suck. You don't get that benefit in the Western Conference. So I think for him is come back and establish yourself as a teammate, a human being, and start to rebuild trust. Because there's no trust right now. From the league, his teammates, and I don't even think he trusts himself. Come back and be the man you want to be. That's my recommendation to John Morant. Because your actions so far have been horrible. And you've hurt your career and you've cost yourself a lot of money. But you're still employed. You're still on an NBA roster. And you could have a great... you're still young. That's the thing for him. You've done all this stupid stuff and you can still have a long career. John Morant is 24. He'll only be 25 in August. You could play for 15 more years, win a couple titles, be an All-NBA, go to the Naismith Hall of Fame. All still there for him. Play some good basketball and try to build Memphis back. Because they were a good organization, they were a fun team. But they're not competitive. And they're not a good basketball team right now with a kind of a bad culture, quite frankly. The Cleveland Cavaliers were a team last year that had a lot of hope. We got Evan Mobley. We got Darius Garland. We get Donovan Mitchell from the Jazz instead of the Knicks. And while they had a good regular season and things went well, they ultimately didn't choose Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson went to the Knicks, and the Knicks beat the Cavaliers in the postseason, and it was a quick, thorough beatdown. So you think, okay, we can build on this. We'll be better next season. Give us some time. Okay. Well, to this point in a bad Eastern Conference, the Cavs are 3 games above 500, and the biggest concern for them is they are without Evan Mobley for 2 months with knee surgery, and Darius Garland for a month with a fractured jaw. That's a problem. 2 of your most important players are not available. And Donovan Mitchell is great, and Karis LeVert is a good player, but you can't make up for that loss. So what did they do? The Cavaliers. They beat the Rockets last night in a shootout. Donovan Mitchell was fantastic, but I felt it was more of an audition than a game for the Cavs. Do they move off of him? Can he keep them competitive into making the playoffs? Probably. The Heat are really inconsistent. My Pacers don't play defense. They gave 160 points to the Clippers last night. And below that, the Bulls are sellers, 6 games below 500. The Hornets stink. The Wizards have 4 wins. And the Detroit Pistons have lost 24 games in a row. So 13 to 15 are not getting in the mix. The Raptors are the only team that really could threaten the Cavs from missing the play-in tournament. But I look like a team like the Minnesota Timberwolves, who are really good. Really good. They don't have a whole lot of draft picks, but could they use another guard maybe to replace Mike Conley? I think they could. Anthony Edwards is more of a 3 than he is a 2 guard. He's quietly becoming the best player in the NBA. Timberwolves, who are 20-5, have the best record in the Western Conference, in the toughest conference in basketball. Could they use him? Sure. Sacramento. Would they look into him? Pelicans, potentially. The Lakers want somebody. We know that. They raised a banner last night for the in-season tournament, which was embarrassing. But they did it. But, LeBron wants to win another championship. Wants to have success. They have D'Angelo Russell, who is not a player of the future, who I don't think they want. They gave him a contract with outs because they want to deal him as soon as they can. But You think, okay, you're going to get Donovan Mitchell instead of D'Angelo Russell? That would be a big add for the Lakers. You might be able to give the Cavs some pieces. They're still a playoff team. But the Cavs know, with the team the way it is, even with Mobley, who doesn't have a jump shot, can't shoot a three, and is very limited in what he can do, you're not beating the Celtics, who are 20-5. You're not beating the Bucks. I don't think they can beat the Sixers. The Magic are 16-9. They're starting to lose some games, but again, the Magic are still a good team. I don't think they're better than the Knicks. The Knicks beat them in the playoffs last year. I think the Knicks would beat them in the playoffs again this year. The Knicks are only a game better than the Cavaliers as of right now. But I like Jalen Brunson. I think Julius Randle started to play better basketball. They don't have Mitchell Robinson at the center position because he's out with an injury. But the Knicks are legit. The Knicks are a top 5 team in the Eastern Conference. I think they're a top 4. I think they're better than Orlando. Or at least they will be by the end of the year. I think they'll be the 4 seed at the worst. Maybe things go poorly for the Sixers, and you get into that mix. But I have a hard time seeing the Cavaliers winning a playoff series with their current bunch of players. Sell a couple gates, get to the playoffs, JB Bickerstaff, head coach, but you look up and go, who are we beating here? And then there's always the zombie Heat, who are 15-12, who are always hanging around. And they don't play well in the regular. They lost again last night to the Timberwolves. But they lurk. Jimmy Butler's not playing a whole lot of basketball right now. He misses every other game. This is what the Heat do. They don't care. 7 seed, 8 seed, play in, they'll take it. If they get in, they're a threat because they have the smartest coach in the sport, and they find a way. Not to mention, what if the Heat wanted him? You couldn't get Damian Lillard. What about Donovan Mitchell? Tyler Hero's played 9 games. I'd rather have Donovan Mitchell. Kyle Lowry's played every game. I'd still rather have Donovan Mitchell. Pieces, draft picks to make it work. Who knows? In the same conference, around the same position, might be tough. But it's a possibility. I think the Cavs are in tough, and I think they will consider trading Donovan Mitchell as we get closer to the trade deadline in February. Not for certain, but it's out there. At this point, Golden State being as bad as they are is a tad surprising. They wouldn't be even in the playing game if it ended today. They are 12-14. They won the other night where Steph Curry did not hit a 3-pointer. I think he was 0 for 11 for the game. They're trailing the Suns, trailing the Rockets, Lakers, Pelicans. No Draymond Green for it sounds like at the very least the next 3 weeks. They have Andrew Wiggins coming off the bench. Chris Paul, who's 100 years old. Klay Thompson, who's started to play better, but I don't trust the Warriors. I like Steve Kerr, and they've had a ton of success, but that doesn't mean it's just going to continue because you had success before. Eventually it ends. You run out of pixie dust, and you can't win anymore. Warriors have the Celtics tonight. The Warriors really have a hell of a week. They get the Celtics, then they get 2 layup opponents. They get the Wizards at home, Trailblazers at home. Then they go to the Nuggets on Christmas Day, which is fun. And I will say, 3 NFL games on Christmas, which kills the NBA. They're despondent beyond repair about that. But the NBA games are good. I'll give them that. Sometimes they screw up these bookings. 1 o'clock, so that's before NFL. Bucks, Knicks. Love it. The only thing I don't like about it is the Bucks and Knicks play 2 days before that, but I like that, the Mecca. Second game of the day, Golden State in Denver. Pardon me. Love that. Steph Curry, got to have him on. Jokic, best player in the NBA, defending champions. The last two champions, actually, so love that. 6 p.m., Celtics, Lakers. For the first time ever on Christmas Day, which surprised me. But you have the Lakers, who just won the IST. You have the Celtics, who have the best record in the NBA. LeBron, Tatum, in Los Angeles, all for it. Sixers, Miami. Again, checkered history there. Embiid going up against Bam Adebayo. They've done it a ton. Miami seems to have his number. I like that. And then Mavericks, Suns to close it today. Luka Doncic, Kevin Durant. So I think those NBA games are good. Bradley Beal, who's played like 4 games this year. I'm going to look that up just to be 100%. I want to be accurate with you all because, that's my big thing. Bradley Beal's always played 6. Pardon me. Played 6 games. Averaging 12 points in those 6 games. He got injured again the other night. Rolled his ankle. He's out 2 to 3 weeks. So I believe that Durant, Booker, and Beal have played 32 combined minutes with one another this year, which is staggering. It's December. Bradley Beal's career might be over. If he keeps getting hurt every other game he plays. He was constantly injured in Washington. He comes to Phoenix. He's getting injured a ton here. It's tough. Phoenix needs the minutes with one another. Again, they're just inside the play-in line themselves. They haven't been good the first start of this season. Still figuring it out. But an older team without stars on the floor, it's hard to win in the NBA because there's so many good players. A lot of depth. Here's one thing I would consider if I'm the NBA, and I'm serious about this. I love their Christmas Day games. I do. I would consider flexing. Pardon me, because my nose is just having some allergies here or something. I would consider flexing any of these games, including Celtics-Lakers, to put the Pistons on Christmas Day if they continue to lose. Detroit Pistons have lost 24 games in a row. The record for one season is 26 in a row. The Sixers lost 28 in a row, but it was over 2 combined seasons. So the record in 1 year is 26 straight losses. They lost again to the Hawks by 6 last night because Kuminga couldn't make a free throw. On Thursday, Pistons are home to the Utah Jazz. The Jazz play on Wednesday in Cleveland, so they'll get the Jazz on a back-to-back. I think this is their best chance to get off this losing streak, to find some success, to win that 3rd game of the year in December. If they don't win that game, they're at Brooklyn on the 23rd. And then they host Brooklyn on the 26th. So that would mean on the 26th, it could be a record-breaking loss if they lose their next 2 games. I would flex that game to the 25th. Nets, Pistons at Barclays in Brooklyn. Because that's so fascinating to me. How many games you can lose in a row. How bad are you? I track their games every night. The Detroit Pistons. I was tracking the Spurs and the Wizards until they both won last Friday to get off their losing streaks. They both have started new losing streaks, but they're very fresh. But if you can make history on Christmas Day and say, hey, NFL fans, come over here and watch this just for a minute. Watch the game. Because if the Pistons lose, they are the biggest losers in NBA history. That's something you can market. I would flex Jokic. What game would I flex? Maybe the Mavericks and Suns. Because who knows if Kevin Durant's going to play in that game, if Devin Booker's going to... any other night, you don't know. With the damn Phoenix Suns, they might just not be available. We got a bad ankle. I got a bad shin. Who knows? Bradley Beal's not playing. We know that he's played 6 games. 6 games. But the Detroit Pistons hosting Utah on Thursday night. I think they're going to win that game to get off the schneid. But if they lose it, you want them on Christmas Day. You need them. You need them on Christmas Day. Raptors got a win last night in a dreadful game. They host the Nuggets tomorrow. Jokic in town. That's always a big deal. The best player in the NBA. They're then at the Sixers Friday, host the Jazz Saturday. So they have a busy schedule before Christmas, where they get 4 days off. But the NBA is a little different from the NHL. NHL gets from 24th and they return on the 27th. NBA, obviously, there's games Christmas. They get Christmas Eve off. There's games Boxing Day. So they really keep going. But keep an eye on those Pistons. 2-25 through 27 games. And they've lost 24 in a row with the highest paid coach in the NBA, in Monty Williams, putting that product on the floor. And despite the fact that Cade Cunningham has played pretty good this season, for the most part, with a really bad team around him. I think, anyway. Played well last night, dropped 40. Wasn't enough to get by Trae Young and the Hawks. Stay tuned for that. Let's go to the UFC. We talked about UFC Sunday night. UFC 296 was last weekend. A lot of craziness. Leon Edwards, Colby Covington. We got Leon retaining, Pantoja retaining. Sean Strickland and Dricus du Plessis got into a fight in the stands. They'll be fighting in Toronto, Ontario, Canada on January 20th. So gear up for that. So there's all kinds of crazy stuff going on in Vegas this weekend. But after the fights, Dana White met with the media and announced a number of fights for UFC 299 that will be in Miami in the month of March. This card will be headlined by Sugar Sean O'Malley, who will defend his bantamweight title for the first time since winning it against Aljamain Sterling in August. He'll fight Marlon Chito Vera in a rematch. We know that on this card, you're going to get Macy Barber, Caitlin Chuagan was announced. Curtis Blades and Gelton Almeida was announced. Rafael Dos Anjos, the former champion at 155, will return to the division and fight Mateusz Gamrot, who is as game as anybody. We learned Lauren Murphy will return to fight Kieran Silva. But we got a number of fight announcements for UFC 299 on Saturday night from Dana White. First fight announced, Kevin Holland, the BMF we talked about last week, who wanted to fight Vicente Luque on short notice, will not be fighting Vicente Luque. He will be fighting newest UFC signee from Bellator, former champion there, great fighter, Michael Venom Page, at 170 pounds. Great matchup. 2 strikers, 2 badasses. For Page, he signs with the UFC, was pondering the PFL. He goes to UFC. He's going to get a ranked fighter right off the bat. similar to what Michael Chandler did after he came over from Bellator. So I love this style matchup. I love it in Miami. Miami is another big piping market for the UFC, and this is a banger of a fight. Another fight in the same weight division. Ian Machado Gary, who was supposed to fight this weekend against Vicente Luque, will fight Jeff Neal. Ian Gary couldn't fight because he had pneumonia. He gets back in the cage against Jeff Neal, they've had beef because he wore the Jeff Neal mugshot t-shirt to a press conference before. So they don't like one another. Gary's ranked 10th. Jeff Neal is ranked 8th. Jeff Neal was on Ariel Helwani's show yesterday, talked about Gary, saying how he doesn't like him, wants to go in there and beat him up, teach him a lesson. Gary's as good as it gets. He's fighting a guy above him in the rankings. This tells me they're going to slow play him. He gets a good break before he gets back in the cage. They have a number of guys at the top 170-pound division that they have to figure out what they want to do with. Do they want to give a title shot to Bilal Muhammad? Do they want to give a title shot to Shavkat Rakhmonov? Looking at him, 18-0, 18 finishes, completely dominant. So this gives Gary another fight in Miami. They want to have a doubling card later in the year, so give him time to prepare for that. He very well could be fighting for the welterweight title by the end of 2024. Ian Machado Gary would not surprise me. Another 170 banger. Gilbert Burns, who fought 3 times from January to May, has been out since that fight in May with a shoulder injury, had surgery. He's healthy. He's coming back. He'll be fighting number 11th ranked Jack Della Maddalena. JDL has been rising the ranks. He fought Kevin Holland in September, won a close decision. I thought he lost the fight, but he got the decision. Fought Hafez in July. Beat Randy Rude Boy Brown in February. He's won 6 fights in a row. He's on a hot streak. The Australian can go. Gilbert Burns has been there with the best. With Bilal Muhammad. With Kamaru Usman. Gilbert Burns is as good as it gets. He's never gotten the title around his waist. But he's a gamer. Absolutely. Beat Jorge Masvidal earlier this year. Beat Neil Magny in the first round. Fought Khamzat Chimaev. It was the closest fight Chimaev's been in. I think it was even a closer decision than the Chimaev and Kamaru Usman fight. Gilbert Burns has beaten Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. He beat Tyron Woodley, Damian Maia, Gunnar Nelson. So he's been there with some tough 170-pounders, and he's come out on top in these events. He beat the Canadian gangster Olivier Aubin Mercier. So JDL has had some holes in his game, hasn't looked great in his last couple fights. Gets to fight Gilbert Burns. Good fight. I like it. Now, I look at those welterweights finally seeing this division being active. Who does Kamaru Usman fight next? Does he go up to 185 permanently? Wonder Boy just fought. Did Wonder Boy and Kamaru fight in the new year? Sean Brady, who won in Texas, he's ranked 7th. Does he get a dance partner? He said he wants to fight in Atlantic City. Because he's from the Philly area, Jersey area. Sean Brady, Vicente Luque would be fun. Because Vicente Luque did not get a fight. Technically, he's left out here. He'd get an opponent higher in the rankings. Because you look, Kevin Holland booked. Neil Magny booked. Chiesa's not booked. But every other ranked fighter has somebody other than Wonder Boy. I guess Colby Covington is an option, but I don't know if he's going to fight again. I think Sean Brady would kick Colby's ass. That'd be an easy fight for him. Rise in the rankings. He's better at Colby Covington in every discipline, especially now with Colby at his age and the way he looked on Saturday. But you're starting to see movement in the welterweight division, which is nice because it was the most stagnant, it was the most boring division in the UFC in 2023. There were no fights. Everybody was just sitting on it. Injuries, just bleh, boring. I'm curious for Usman. He wants to fight Chimaev again, which I don't disagree with him. It was a close-ass fight, and if he gets a full training camp, he very well could beat him. But do they want to put Chimaev on UFC 300? Against the winner of Strickland and Dricus? Maybe. Be a fun fight. Do they want to put Chimaev UFC 300, not for a title, but against, I don't know, Robert Whittaker? The former champion, great guy, great fighter. Do you want to put him in there against Paulo Costa? Who, if I'm the UFC, I don't trust to book a fight with. Marvin Vettori. Just interesting decisions. Also announced for UFC 299, Song Yadong, who won 2 weeks ago now at the Apex, defeating Chris Gutierrez. He will fight Petr Yan, who hasn't fought in a minute. Hasn't fought since he got dominated against Corey Sandhagen. He returns, Petr Yan, former champion, against Song Yadong. It's the fight he wanted. Sorry, he was mauled against Merab Davishvili. Petr Yan's lost technically 4 fights in a row. He beat Sandhagen. Losing to Sterling. Losing to O'Malley. Decision. Losing to Merab. So he's trying to get back in the winner's circle. He gets Song Yadong, who's ranked 7th, I believe. Yep. So 5th ranked fighter against a 7th ranked fighter. Fun fight. I would have loved to have seen Figueiredo and Petr Yan. 2 strikers. 2 guys that just like to go in there and lay it all on the line. But that's not going to happen. That's okay. Sandhagen will be back, so Sandhagen's going to need to fight somebody. I think Figueiredo and Cody Garbrandt, like Cody said over the weekend, would be fun. 2 former champions getting in there, throwing down, 2 guys with similar skill sets. I'm all for that. But Song Yadong, Petr Yan's a fun fight. 2 guys looking to get back to the title shot in the bantamweight division. What I'm most excited about with these fight announcements late in 2023 for 2024 is you're seeing the divisions move. You're seeing guys get fights, get opportunities. The next guy I want to see booked is Aljamain Sterling. Is he a bantamweight or is he a featherweight? He wants to fight Calvin Kattar at 145. Book it, UFC 300. The way Dana White's talking about UFC 300, Aljamain Sterling, Calvin Kattar could be a prelim fight. A former champion against Kattar who's pretty damn good. Sterling against Max Holloway, UFC 300, would be really fun too. Because we talked about UFC 300 finding a headliner for that event. Not going to be easy. I think Holloway can be thrown into that mix somehow. Holloway, does he want to move up to lightweight, fight Justin Gaethje, or fight Dustin Poirier, or fight Charles Oliveira, who he fought a while ago, and he beat? Do they want to put Michael Chandler and Conor McGregor in UFC 300? All decisions they're going to have to make. But all I know is UFC 299, it's looking like a stacked card in Miami. It's going to be hard for the UFC to top this event. The way it looks on paper, a lot of great fights, a lot of stakes to them. Big moments for these guys. So I'm excited to see what happens. UFC's off until January 13th, which sucks. Does suck. But returns on the 13th. Magomed Ankalaev, Johnny Walker, lightweight, title eliminator. Mateus Nicola, Manel Cup, flyweight. Jim Miller, Gabriel Benitez, lightweight. Ricky Simon, Mario Bautista, an important fight at bantamweight. It's a solid Apex card. Andrei Arlovsky, former heavyweight champion. Then you get the Toronto card, where you get a lot of Canadians, a lot of former champions, a lot of great fighters on this card. A very solid pay-per-view card in Canada. They're normally not that great. This one is a hell of a lot better than the one Vancouver got. I'll tell you that. A lot better. Let's go to baseball. Yamamoto, the pitcher, has not been signed yet. He's met with everybody, mulling over options. Less than a week before Christmas. I'm not sure anything gets done before Christmas. Heard for weeks Cody Bellinger is the favorite to land with the Blue Jays. No deal signed yet. Teoscar Hernandez is available. Lourdes Gurriel Jr. returned to the Diamondbacks, so he's off the board. Blake Snell, Josh Hader. Tyler Glasnow was traded to the Dodgers. The Dodgers have done the most work. Marlins haven't spent a dime. Blue Jays haven't spent a dime yet. Just two teams that I know haven't spent any money in free agency. Yankees were active, but you're still a lot of guys out there. Still a lot of time before the start of next season. But to me, I don't expect any big splashes this week because, listening to a podcast I recommend everybody listen to, Nothing Personal with David Sampson, as he said, you don't like to make deals before Christmas. It's kind of a down period. Today, the NHL starts their freeze at midnight tonight. There'll be no trades through the 28th. Just kind of the holiday window and nothing happens. No business. What we've learned is, the Kansas City Royals, who have spent no money since really winning their World Series, and that was a while ago, spend $100 million in free agency so far. Crazy. Michael Wacha, 2 years, $32 million. Signed Hunter Renfroe, 2 years, $13 million. They signed Seth Lugo to a $32 million deal. Will Smith, who's won 3 straight World Series, added to the bullpen. Also, Chris Stratton to their bullpen. So they're being aggressive, signing guys who aren't exactly aces, aren't guys who are going to carry you to championships, but kind of on the outskirts. Good players, not great players. You can plug and play them. They're trying to help their team. We also learned Max Scherzer had a procedure on his back. He's out until July. Jacob deGrom should return around the same time for the Rangers with Tommy John. Jordan Montgomery's a free agent, so he's another guy that could be signed by anybody, including Texas. But it looks like they'll have those two guys back for the stretch run for the postseason, which is the biggest thing for the Rangers as they try to repeat. And if you look at their team, when it's healthy next year, their rotation is going to be pretty solid. So I pull up their depth chart for all of you here. Nathan Eovaldi, Andrew Heaney, Dane Dunning, John Gray, Tyler Mahle, Jacob deGrom, Max Scherzer. They're going to have guys. They're going to have too many guys. They're going to have to put people in the bullpen. They got talent. Certainly. They got good players. They're still going to have Adolis Garcia, Evan Carter. They hope they can get Jordan Montgomery back. But they still got a good club. They could possibly go out there and sign Clayton Kershaw, who the Dodgers haven't brought back yet. I don't think they will bring back. Potentially Clayton Kershaw could go back to Texas, finish his career there. But interesting to say the least that they're doing a lot to remain relevant, current. But Yamamoto, nothing new, nothing reported yet. meeting with all the teams, mulling over offers. And he seems to be the next chess piece holding up money. Because I think certain teams want him. I think Bellinger would love to go back to the Dodgers potentially go back to the Cubs. See if the Blue Jays bring him in. I don't think he's a big fish. I think he's a good player. But is he a game changer if the Blue Jays land him? No, he isn't. To football. Nathan Rourke. Remember him? BC Lions. Left the CFL to sign with Jacksonville. He's been on their practice squad most of the season. He was elevated to their active roster when they thought Trevor Lawrence was going to miss a game. But he was cut off the active roster on Saturday. And he was claimed off waivers by the New England Patriots. The Patriots lost Malik Cunningham, who was signed by the Ravens. Nathan Rourke was the third string all year. Leaves Jacksonville, goes to New England. Partly also New England lost Will Grier, who the Chargers signed because they lost Justin Herbert for the season. So Will Grier goes out west, and now Nathan Rourke, former CFLer, Canadian quarterback, is a member of the New England Patriots with Bill Belichick. Nothing signals he will be their starting quarterback this week or they're making a quarterback change, but it's a change of scenery for Nathan Rourke. In Jacksonville all year, you know you're not going to get an opportunity. You go to another organization. I don't think it hurts him. He's in a situation where maybe he does play in that last game of the year. If they've seen enough of Zappy, they've already benched Mac Jones. At the very least, maybe Nathan Rourke is active once or twice over the last 3 weeks. Is the backup quarterback. If there's an injury, he can go in. But he was not going to get that opportunity in Jacksonville, clearly. They did not see that in him. In New England, potentially he will. Watching him in the preseason, I definitely think he's good enough to be a backup quarterback to stay in the league. Spending the entire year on the practice squad. I don't know if he'll come back to the NFL. Maybe you see a lot of guys who do that. They don't play. They decide to go back to the CFL, make good money, and they get to play. Sometimes that's the decision. Nathan's brother, Curtis, just transferred to Indiana. He'll be their starting quarterback last year after starting the last number of years for the University of Miami of Ohio. His last year of eligibility, he wants to be an NFL quarterback too. So 2 quarterbacks from Canada looking to get to the NFL. But Nathan Rourke goes to New England. I thought that was an interesting development. Interesting claim for the Patriots. The Texans also tried to claim him, apparently. That was a report, so the Patriots beat him out. Ravens running back Mitchell, we talked about, he has a full ACL tear. He's done for the season. Horrible news. Mitch Trubisky benched. Mason Rudolph will start on Saturday for the Steelers against the Cincinnati Bengals. So Mason Rudolph, yes, he's still in the league. Yes, he's still in the Steelers. He's back as the backup quarterback carousel continues. Also today we learned Aaron Rodgers on Pat McAfee. Jets were eliminated from playoff position on Sunday. He says, from this injury, I'm not ready to come back right away. I'm going to need about 3 to 4 more weeks. There's 3 weeks left in the season, which is odd timing that it works out that way. But he's not playing. He said he wants Hackett back. He wants Salah. He wants Joe Douglas, all returning. He'll likely get his way. I don't see the owner going against Aaron Rodgers' wishes. Maybe he will, but I don't think he will. To me, this is him saying, this is him kind of admitting my science wasn't that good because I can't play. But it's also, I'm not playing because there's nothing to play for. Let Simeon or Zach Wilson, if he's not concussed, go out there and get the snaps and lose the last couple games. Let's hope we get the best draft pick we can. I'll come back in 2024 2025, and let's try to win a Super Bowl. That's basically where this team is going. But Aaron was never going to come back. I love Aaron, but he was never going to come back. That was always a fabricated story. It sounded too good to be true, and it was. But credit to him for keeping the story going as long as he did. It was foolish from the beginning, but he kept it going, so credit to him. Seahawks beat the Eagles last night. Jalen Hurts, 2 interceptions in the fourth quarter on deep passes. I thought he played a good 3 quarters, 2 rushing touchdowns. He's 1 rushing touchdown away from breaking Cam Newton's 14 rushing touchdowns by a quarterback in one season. That's most in a single season in NFL history. But just mistakes. He doesn't have any touch on the ball. He doesn't have feel for it. Doesn't have that connection with A.J. Brown. This team is mediocre at best. They make stupid mistakes. Their quarterback's not playing well. And they average about 16 points a game. You're not beating many teams like that. Drew Lock beat the Eagles last night. Philly, it's also a brutal loss for Philly because they dropped to 10-4, and the Cowboys, as of now, are back into leading the NFC East and into that second position in the NFC. If the Cowboys win out, where they get the Dolphins, the Lions, and the Commanders, they will win the division and have multiple home playoff games, which is exactly what Dallas needs. Their best chance to get back to an NFC championship game, which they haven't been to since 1995. But Philly's not a scary team. They just aren't. A wounded team that seems old, fragile, they can't connect on passes. I hate that they call about the same 3 plays every 3rd and 6. It's a quarterback draw. Hate that. Defenses know it's coming. It never works, yet they don't change that up. They had to go to Matt Poitras as their defensive coordinator. That would scare the hell out of me. They can't sack the quarterback. I mean, come on. They get the Giants twice and the Cardinals, which is a very favorable schedule. But Philly right now is not a gimme against anybody. Anybody can beat them because they're not a great team. And the whole league is around the same. Seattle beats them last night. That's going to happen. That's Seattle. They're 7-7. They're in the proverbial mix. I think if Seattle wins out, they're going to make the playoffs at 10-7. Right now, they're the 8 seeds, so they're a game out. They're behind the Rams. The Rams finish with a better record than the Seahawks. Rams get in because the Rams beat them twice. But the Vikings have to play the Lions twice down the stretch. Seahawks with Geno Smith or no Geno Smith. They get at the Titans this Sunday, home to the Steelers on New Year's Eve, and then they close at the Cardinals. Very good schedule. No gimme wins because I don't trust these teams. But to me, after last night's game, it's going to tell me the Seahawks are going to be a playoff team because the Bucs and the Saints play each other, so somebody's got to win. You're going to have a loss there. Falcons are 6-8, and I think the Seahawks are better. Falcons won't win out, even with my guy, the Green Lizard, Taylor Heineke, back under center. Packers are done at 6-8. And I think the Vikings might lose out, as we talked about the other day. Home Detroit, home Packers, at the Lions. Maybe they go 1-2. I think you could lose all 3 easily. But they're in a bad place right now if you're Philadelphia. No confidence, can't do anything right. But they got to try to figure. They've already clinched the playoff spot. They need to figure it out in Philadelphia because they're not beating the Cowboys right now. No chance. We'll talk about NFL lines for the weekend on Thursday. So Thursday, we're going to recap what happens the next couple of days. We'll talk about the NFL lines for the weekend. We'll preview Thursday Night Football. And then Friday, we'll react to Friday night action across the world of sports. And we'll talk about the World Juniors. So that's what's coming up later in the week. That's what's coming up here on To The Point. Hope you guys enjoyed the show today. Appreciate the support, as always, as you always do. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. We'll talk to you Thursday here on To The Point.